2007. Professor Rao has been engaged in the teaching ministry since 1995 and has been serving as the principal of Leonard Theological College, Tabagor, since 2015. Professor Rao brings extensive academic and ministerial experience. He has published widely in national and international journals and edited volumes, and has also authored 4 books, including The Formulation of Scripture, Liberative Hebrew Paradigm for Vedic Scripture. He is one of the veterans of our Senate fraternity. He is a well-known academic, mathematician, computer scientist, researcher, and tribal rights activist. She obtained her BSc in mathematics from Women's College, Christian College, Chennai, her MSc in mathematics from Madras Christian College, Chennai, and her MPhil and PhD in computer science from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi in 1997. Professor Mins has been engaged in the teaching profession since 1997. She is a prolific writer, having published numerous articles in national and international journals, and has co-authored and authored several books. She has held several administrative roles in JNU, including member of the Executive Council and Academic Council of JNU. She also served as the Dean of School of Computer and Systems Sciences during 2009 to 2011, and as the President of the JNU Teachers Association in 2018. From 2020 to 2023, she served as the Vice Chancellor of Sidho Kanu Murmu University in Dumka, Jharkhand. Upon the successful completion of the tenure as Vice Chancellor, Professor Mins returned to the School of Computer and Systems Sciences at JNU, New Delhi. Professor Mins, we sincerely welcome you and thank you for graciously accepting to be the resource person for the Board Seminar 2025. We look forward to an enlightening session this morning. Before I give the time to
March, we have every evening or almost every other evening march. Either it is a victory march or it is a march trying to speak out. And my apologies, Dr. Sunil. We were contemporaries in JNU together as students, and so sometimes I take liberty of calling those who are familiar to me by their first name. My sincere apologies. However, education, and then to have this privilege also to be a Vice Chancellor in one of the state universities in Jharkhand, my own home state, I think it was nothing but God's plan to get me there. Tucked away in a Santal populated area, and truly named as Santal Pargana. I was a Vice Chancellor there during COVID and post-COVID, and I think it was also a time for me to do what would be called justice. I hope in times to come that actions and things that were possible to be done would also be enlisted as justice. Having said that, I just want to span through, change. Change is the other term which is familiar, because in my research use of artificial intelligence, we keep doing change analysis, change pattern analysis, change footprint pattern analysis. So change is what is familiar to me. And by God's grace, my term in Jharkhand was not renewed. It was a short, sweet 3-year term, and it was not renewed in 2023. Because after coming back, again, I think some of us never sit back, even though the retirement is closing in. And so, with a collaborator in Simon Fraser University, She's an expert in education. The two of us have been appointed as UNESCO Chair this year in 2025 in transforming indigenous knowledge, research, governance, and remediation. So I think there has hardly been a time that I could relax and sit back and say, now what next? Because that next always keeps coming, and I praise God for that. Having said that, I just want to gloss through a few topics, and if the PDF of the PPT has been shared with you, you just might be able to look it up in your phones. My sincere apologies for not warned the office early enough to do the arrangement. However, so I just want to touch base with the Institute of Srinagar College for reasons very important, because this did make the blueprint for what modern educational institutions or higher educational institutions are, and that blueprint has not changed. I think my membership to the board as an academician is also out of that. The charter of 1827 says the missionaries, then the academicians, and then the functionaries of the Synod of Srinagar College. And so it is almost like this almost 200 years, 198 years that I'm sitting here with this very prestigious invitation to be a member as an academician on the board. So I want to gloss through the Synod of Srinagar, or the history that is there. The second thing being the theological or Indian theological education. Third being change, and in the change, the area of change, I would try to speak my passion out and how it must speak into the Indian theological education today or for tomorrow. So I heard the famous quote of William Carey. Now it is time for me to review to all of these founders and also those whose either action, decision, or faith has made it possible for me to be here today. So 1985, 86, way back in MCC, I did hear this famous quote of William Carey: expect great things from God and attempt great things for God. I think both the parts stayed with me ever since, and therefore probably not really the biological DNA, but otherwise the functional DNA also from my parents that me and my three sisters, four of us, have been able to adapt. Having said that, yeah, the founding, I was just going to go through, and it was so heartening in times such as this, when even education and hospitals or health care by any mission, church, or even Christian individual is being alleged as a tool for conversion, right? And that has, the background is decolonization. That is the angst against the British or the colonial history. But the pleasant thing for me was to discover that it was not, it was even the pre-British institutions of higher education. This institution was founded by Baptist missionaries from Denmark, and Danish, and so therefore it was which had a very, very different characteristic. So my tribute to Reverend William Carey, Reverend Joshua Marshman, William Ward, who did what they wanted to do and what they were probably led to do, founding this institution which still has a scope to profess how it is not the one producing only elitists, because this institution was founded in 1818. I don't have to tell you all. 27, the charter was approved by the King of Denmark himself, but it was only 30 years, nearly 30 years later, the three universities in India at Kolkata, Mumbai, and Madras were founded only to produce more administrators, elitism with English and etc., as opposed to the inclusive education that that was in the vision of Synod of Serampore, vernacular education, making it even further inclusive, linguistically inclusive, as well as, I guess they were probably impacted by the plight of people, and therefore it was meant to be inclusive as far as any social stratification that was visible at that time, and I'm wondering whether it is still apparent today. I would like to pay tribute to what happened almost 175 years ago in Ranchi. The first person who took baptism by and after a great discussion and being adamant about missionaries from Germany who did not show Jesus to the four persons who took baptism, but then this person, Nabin Doman Tirki, he stood up to his faith, and all the persecution at that time from the land moneylenders and the zamindars withstood, and I think therefore the Gossamer Evangelical Lutheran Church, Northwestern Gossamer Evangelical Lutheran Church, stands even today, not only in Ranchi, Jharkhand, but most metros of the country, and wherever the members have gone. It was being said, like, and I also mentioned that in 1951 to 53, my father was here as a young BD student. I think he came here after BA, so he may not have joined BTH, because those days there should have been BTH. In fact, I remember in 1960s in Gossamer Theological College there was LTH also. So I do remember that because we stayed on the Theological College campus. And I think I would like to pay tribute to his fearlessness and what made him stand and take his faith, translate his faith to action. And therefore he was not only a man who preached or even wrote scholarly articles on what gospel means, but he also acted by starting, some of you know, or most of you may also know, Gossamer College, which is in Ranchi, founded in 1971, only with the eligibility criteria being 3rd division. First divisioners were denied admission. They were denied, yes. And high second class were also denied. So the students who had probably the average percentage less than 55 or 50 preferably, I mean, 3rd divisioners. So that's the kind, and this college stands today, those who are here. I think we don't have to talk too much about it. However, this college continues to serve the 3rd divisioners, I'm sure, right? Because these divisions are, or the percentage score that one gets, are the quantitative things which are used for exclusion. But here was an institution for inclusion. I just wanted to make a mention of my mother's name also. I had photographs of both of them. My parents, my mother's mother, Parakrita Minch, she not competing with her husband, I guess. She started the very first nursery school in Ranchi. She started the very first daycare center in Ranchi. When she saw the women were working, and also women who had babies 1 month old, she took those babies so that the women could go back to work. And so they were very sensitive to the society and what was happening in the society, changing Ranchi, and they did try to bring in things which would be which should be a gospel to the society. Coming back to the Serampore College, this was the first degree granting institution in the country. And yes, and with the teaching and examination, conducting examination, and based on that granting degree. I did mention 30 years later, the 3 universities which were also found in the institution where teaching happened, examination happened, and granting of degree also happened. They're very inclusive institution, vernacular and English, both education was there, and it was the first autonomous CNET in the country. The universities, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the 3 universities were supposed to make the elite of the country even more elite to fit the requirements of the administration, or British administration. And so these universities had a large affiliating model. So number of institutions would seek affiliation and would be under them for the degrees from University of Madras, Bombay, and Kolkata. However, this was a different one, which was, I mean, needless to say, was for degrees in arts and theology. William Carey himself being a language fan, and I was just reading about him at the age of 12, I think he already had learned Latin or Greek, one of those, and then he learned languages, and he was an avid reader, and therefore, I think, and then became the dissenter rather than the mainstream church in order to do things differently. And I think this institution also was founded as a symbol or as an example of dissent from what otherwise happens in the mainstream. And for me, the CNET of Serampore College is an example of dissent, which my father also did in this place. Well, I'm also married to a graduate from here, so therefore another emotional moment. My husband was here, he did his BD with Vileka. I forgot to ask him as the year. To my recollection, I think he was here in 84 he should have been here, and Godwin Nag, his classmate, who's also a bishop in the Lutheran Church. Having said that, yeah, so I'm messing up with my slide buttons. So now, CNET of Serampore, what is the picture of CNET of Serampore today? I'm sure the registrar can inform us more, but I just checked the website, and there are 66 colleges, 3 federated faculty besides the one here. And I know a few years ago, till probably 10 years ago, there was a course also for civilians like me or the laypersons like me who could do a course, but I think that's no more there. But I would now like to go to my second segment on theological education. But theological education in India has never been a new thing, right? With 1818, it's the Christian theological education which came in. And so prior to that, we did have these schools or gurukulams or ashrams of Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh and Islamic madrasa and etc. where theological education did happen, right? And only they were supposed to be the masters and the, let's say, custodians of the society at that time. But the CNET of Serampore, 1818, brought another marked change, and in 1827 again into the history of theological education in India, with Christian theology being taught also besides, and also with arts, okay, liberal arts. Later on, science and commerce were also added here. But then these theological education in India prior to Christian theological education, and I'm sure the objective of CNET of Serampore also sort of speaks speaking to these, the emphasis were on the respective scriptures, the rituals, the commentaries, philosophies, and engaging also at times, if ever it was needed, with each other to see what was similar or what was dissimilar. But having said that, Christian theological education came as a very formal, structured learning in study of God, in study of religion, the scriptures, ethics, ministries, community practice. And I think that is how the graduates of Synod of Serampore probably were distinct, because with the other theological education, there wasn't a sense of service or ministry. There was elitism as opposed to ministry or service. And here, the engagement with the communities towards practice of what was learned about God, about religion, about scripture, about ethics. And therefore, here, it was reading of each to the scripture, but not only listening, because the others came from an oral tradition, not only we tribal, coming from an oral tradition, but all of that. But here was this very formal, structured learning. And the graduates were trained to be leaders, needless to say, right? And to preserve the sacred or sacredness of the text and prevent misinterpretation. So interpret and also engage. And I think what started here also contributed in a big way in the freedom struggle of India, and therefore those influenced by the teaching learning in this institution also participated in the freedom struggle, in the post-independence, also in what the shape of modern India should look like, and therefore this institution has also served and seen to it that the religious communities are also sustained. Well, I just wanted to, if the slide was here, I would have talked about the degrees, but then, see, even the practice of accreditation also started with this institution. And so it was not only affiliation, but accreditation and network. And that is why we see the sample of the network of Christian theological education right now present in this hall. And the network is, I mean, I can talk about computer network, but these networks, which are relation-based, relationship-based, are based on the communities, the network of not only institutions, but they are relational in terms of relation of people and how to impact and continue to be impacting people, the communities where the graduates from these institutions are going to go. And so, what I see, the theological education in India has the features as, and also all of you are probably in charge and you oversee, you have an authority for oversight of what the curriculum and how the curriculum must be made abreast, adopt or not, and deliberate upon it. But then there is, this is the only institution where the education about other religions was also important. At least introductory level, so that the camaraderie, the citizenship, and also communities with whom we educate to really be the salt and light in this country. And so this multi-religious context was one of the realities and to which this institution has responded. Not only that, contextual, I think this has been the cradle of, or the affiliating institutions have been a cradle of contextual theology. And the Indian theology, Indian theological discourse has contributed enormously to what is known as contextual theology. And so the heart of that is social justice. And in fact, one of my slides later on, I would have said, we only do not, I mean, it's easy to remember faith without action as for change, right? But my question is, can faith without justice be considered in this country? Linguistic plurality has been there, and this institution responded to that. Ecumenical collaboration and community-oriented training continues to be the distinctiveness of this institution. And so having said so much about what this institution or CNET stands for is a big deal. And if we have now, it is important to see if change is there, it has taken place in the institution, or change has been there in the community, change in where we come from and where we go back to, or is it the times themselves have changed? I would have projected a slide of, a spatio-temporal data of India, and I had dots out there. I'm hopeful that the PDF will get circulated so that it would have made the things more impactful. And then whenever we say change, and those of you who were in school would remember how in the graph we needed to plot the values, right? And sometimes it is up, and if it is about, let's say, temperature itself, right? And we would have certain points up, down, and so the difference between two values is a change, right? Anywhere. And so I just wanted to display the crime hotspots of a change pattern of crime hotspots of in order to just to deal with the thought of change. But experience change. I don't know what I would have gone and come if it was 50 years ago. And I was a little girl, 13 years old. But then, if the women of at that time, 50 years ago, had to come and just be around in this campus, and maybe I could have come in my traditional attire, but today I wear what is trendy. I can wear what is trendy. I can present myself likewise, because I don't want to stand out, because I may not be outstanding also. But then, and the change is what comes out and gets noticed very easily. And whoever is different, difference stands out very alarmingly. But therefore, it is important to discern whether the difference is due to change or due to no change. The difference can be because no change also has happened in a person, a place, or a thing, but an institution, a teaching program, maybe the graduates, maybe the characteristic of an institution. And therefore, at times, change may be desirable. Change is inevitable. We see from the climate, soil, water. Tell me one thing which has not changed. And I do remember when I started my education and we would travel in early 80s. If the train stopped, of course, it was steam engine, and now it's all electric and AC and etc. Right? From steam engine to whatever is Indian Railway, we could stop. If the train stopped and if there was a well, everybody would rush and fill water. Now we can't do, we have the bottles, right? And we wouldn't want to take water from the tap and drink, especially in India. I don't know about Kolkata. I hope it is possible in Serampur campus. Okay, so nothing that we can see, feel, hear is as it was meant to be, as created. And so soil, water, air, it's such a pleasant break to be away from Delhi, the gas chamber, because those of us who come from Delhi feel the air much better. Ocean, seasons, everything, the rainfall, the average rainfall annually for the past 5 years has not changed. The average rainfall, but the days of the rainfall have changed. And they have just got reduced to a few days as opposed to a few weeks. And so everything, the society has had to change. We had a wonderful, I'm doing a course, and Dr. Sunil had presented a wonderful lecture on political economy. And economy has changed. I'm able to get this Gondi jewelry because they have also taken they're using it for their economic benefit and also for me to adorn it. Yeah, and but again, the way economy has changed and there are changes taking place. Polity itself, lifestyle and living conditions have changed. It's enormous. I wonder whether the society has a direction to adopt, reject, go counter to certain aspects of the book or a very fine article on this, Genesis 1:28. You know, it captures the entire these phases of creation, fall, redemption, and new creation. But so therefore, does the social and cultural reality today, in and around where we come from, where we go back, where the institution where we are, and therefore CNET of Serampore, while is a body which is like a hub of the network and also about affiliation and accreditation, whether is looking into or giving autonomy and freedom to the institutions to be speaking into or consider, let's say, gender equality or inequality in a sense, Dalit rights, tribal Adivasi autonomy, minority protection, creation care or climate change. I'm sure one speaks about on that. But here, while getting educated, it must be there. But does it go to the communities through the service, in the sermon, in the care, the pastoral care that is extended? So is the education, is the training getting translated to the service and the ministry and the community engagement? I would have wanted to ask that. I wanted to talk about a little bit of, if I'm sitting here or if my father was there, and if we would not speak about the Adivasi, it would be unfair to where we come from, and because we owe to whoever has gone before us. And so the 8.6% of us, which is only 104 million population, right? This is as far as the 11 census is concerned. I just wanted to mention this, a little bit of Adivasi fact check, my slide would have said. In the Supreme Court, the judges not Supreme Court, this is High Court judges during 2018 to 24. Out of 610, only 21 SCs are in the Supreme Court and only 12 SCs. 21 SC and 12 Adivasis, STs. 1.9, not even 2% of the judges. This is the Adivasi fact check that I want to do. Of the IAS, IPS, IRS, 4,365. There are 334 SCs and 166 STs, only 3.4%. We're not 8.6, not even close to 7.5, which the reservation system, thanks to Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who made that provision. But look at the gap. In the IITs and IIMs, we have only there are a total of 26,751 faculty members in only IITs and IIMs. Okay, this is the response given to Manoj Jha, the MP in Rajya Sabha in 2024. The figure is that there are only 10% SE and ST faculty members, only 3%, please do the arithmetic, 3% of 26,751 Adivasis. When I was looking at the entire history and the spirit of CNET of Serampore, I almost felt like bleeding in my heart. has the training and has the mission and vision of Synod of Serampore become a torchlight which has a battery which continues to drain? Or is it the change, a changing era that is not able to do the constitutional justice also to where the institutions are? Before I became a vice chancellor, I don't know why the Lord has used my own words for me to be a prophetic one. In JNU, I was talking about an institution is accountable to the community where it stands. I made that statement when I was in Genoda prison. And then I go to Sidhu Kanu Murmu University in Dumka, a little town of Dumka, which was deprived of having the second airport of Jharkhand, and it went to Devghar. You know why. But, and then there it was for me to practice what I had said. The institution is not only accountable to who gives the funds. Educational institutions today, higher education institutions are not only accountable or comply to what UGC says. Are they accountable to the community in whose land the institution stands? Maybe those people have lost their land and or given their land or given up their land. Is it accountable to them? How much? How much are these higher education institutions doing? It is also said, I mean, since I was a member of this, the previous registrar had also mentioned to me, saying, ma'am, can you help, our degrees of, theological degrees are not recognized. I said, we'll work it out. The point is here also, I remember my own teacher, Reverend Dr. J.T.K. Daniel, he was a principal here. But then, what kind of mapping or correspondence do we have with the Science Arts Commerce College and Theological College? I did want to talk about also that if the Adivasis in this country, the 8.6, it's good to project them as not museum piece, but for entertainment also. We do become examples of diversity of India, geographical diversity, linguistic diversity, ethnic diversity, and etc. etc. But the legal provisions which have also been there, for the Adivasis to be equal citizens, dignity being equal to any other citizen. I think that still remains a gap because there are numerous schools and institutions in this country, especially schools. I visited 6 of them in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh border, in Wayanad, in Orissa, the Kui tribe. I've also been to Nilgiris, and also the 2 places I have not been to, Gujarat and Maharashtra. All education in the Adivasi regions is either lost in translation or lost in pedagogy. And therefore, it was heartening for me that our proposal to UNESCO, which talks about which is to also propel the national education policy of mother tongue education. We wanted to work on indigenous pedagogy, and that's the presentation I made on 20th, a few days ago at Auckland. I was in a conference, World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education, a professor of AI in computer science. I think it's important to go make that complete the circle by going back to the primary education of my children and my grandchildren. My children, my own kids are 24 and 26, but then community has my children and grandchildren. I did want to talk about, therefore, what keeps us still either isolated or wanting to assimilate as institutions. We are living in the times of hate and fear. Fear of being further either identified as the unwanted or fear of not going with the trend. And therefore, while change and changing times are there are still reasons and things for which one may stand and stand out and be outstanding rather than only stand out. In doing what was envisioned, and especially the institutions, and I know there are these bodies such as IIJ, All India Association of Christian Higher Education, etc. But I think the spirit of what was the founding spirit of this founding this Senate of Srinagar College, that has not impacted our higher education institutions equally, because our other colleges, and if ever there is one university, are we still there in the business of cultural assimilation by making elitists, and those who are unable to become the elitist are then lost, or they are the last, or they are the least. And therefore, things such as I would like us all to think about this phrase, faith without justice. And therefore see, these days, therefore, it is said whoever is different is perceived to be a problem. Come on, I think self-determination for Adivasis can be the answer and not the problem. Can be the solution. Education is not empowerment. Education is the answer, but with the right pedagogy and the environment. And future depends on our commitments, and especially to the least lost and the last. They can be in all sections of the society, but who is there in a higher percentage? We need to look at those hot spots, or rather cold spots, where education or empowerment is not, the agency of the people is not there. And therefore, I would say every Adivasi child deserves a quality of life and access to quality education and honor of their heritage too. I should not be made to feel lesser human if I speak in my language, even in my school, JNU. Because I think what had triggered also my father when he went to another school, he was going to go and get admission, and they were speaking in Kuruh, the same language. The principal said he wanted to shoo them away and said he would not even take the test for admission. And my dad stood up and said, you take a test, and if you pass, you take us, not otherwise. And the test was in English and Hindi language. And all those who passed, or needless to say, my father passed. But then he did not leave the mother tongue, because and the identity, Adivasi identity. If others have the right to speak their language and go forward with their cultural identity, so does the 750 or more STs of this country. I think I have probably 10 minutes. Okay, I'll quickly now touch upon the technology and artificial intelligence, because that is also what has been expected of me. Well, I come from the cultural background of abundant intelligence, another AI. And also I teach artificial intelligence, so I find myself right in the middle of the two ends of the spectrum of abundant intelligence and artificial intelligence. I think indigenous knowledge or tribal knowledge at the moment is the only example, or not example, but a system which is sustainable, which everybody worldwide acknowledges. And so the last thing which the tribal regions or territories of our land is left with, first was the mines, especially Jharkhand or Central India belt, then forest and mine, right? And then the land also, because industry is required, right? Climate change is taking place, and then probably the agriculture is not making enough for the livelihood. So take away the land, have the industry, not even job to the person who gives away the land, but the person becomes a migrant either in Kerala or distant parts of the country. From the central India, I'm sure all of us have experienced it. What has remained, which is ours, with us, is that abundant intelligence. And when I was the Vice Chancellor in Sidhu-Kanhu, I said, the only thing left for us is here. And now it is mining of the mind, the culture, the language. And so it is a very opportune time for all the tribals, Adivasi, who are in the business of technology, especially AI, to come forward and then probably decide the future of AI, because now it is being talked about ethics of AI. And I'm sure, courses or topics such as this, ethics of technology and especially AI, must be in the curriculum of Srinagar. It must be already existing, and if it isn't, that's a need, right? Anything, any appliance, I mean, be it from a knife, with kitchen knife, to any stick, right? Hockey stick is not only used for playing hockey. I used to be the player, but it can be used otherwise. We see in the country, the raging mobs, they have anything, the cricket bat or even the stumps, right? And so anything, there has to be ethics of use of any tool, and why not AI and technology? AI, I think I'll quickly, instead of talking about applications of AI, I'll just try to bring the comfort to some, because there's so much of hype, myths, besides the threats of technology and AI. Definitely, AI is not going to replace the teachers and pastors, right? So pastors and teachers will always be there. And probably there is a possibility of having this animated sermon that can be played online in an online service. But the relation or which the community, the relationship-based touch, the service and the ministry that the community needs will not be with this digital one. Why? There is a digital gap, digital divide. However, so I've got a list of 10 jobs that the AI cannot take over. Is definitely each of us, if we are going for surgery to whichever hospital, even CMC Bangalore or AIMS, yeah, surgery surgeons, therapists and counselors, artists. It's so easy that we see the art, certain art, and especially the culture-specific art, they are being used without caring for the intellectual property, and they are being used for the benefit of some others who are painting the walls in the cities. Sohrai painting, which is that of the Santals, is used and is for the benefit or earning of a Diku painter. High-level professional athletes, high-level strategists, analysts, lawyers, we would not want, or lawyers will not probably. I was happy to note that judges are not in this list. I hope the judgments or the things would be done by AI, irrespective of how the human lawyers argue. Journalists, customer care representatives, scientists, really, although ChatGPT and the AI tools can give us a perfect research paper with also fabulous references, and those of us from the area would know whether a referred article is really a true one. Because in the beginning, when ChatGPT was getting famous for even producing research articles, one of my AI colleagues, we discovered we intentionally entered the topic, a beautiful paper came out with wonderful references. One of the reference had 4 leading AI experts from the world who have never collaborated, and this was co-authored before. Having said that, the real science or scientists cannot, but needless to say again, the teachers and pastors' job will never be taken away by AI. There are real threats: erosion of critical thinking and creativity. Digital divide cannot be denied. misinformation and algorithmic bias prevails in AI because AI is able to access what it can, and based on that, it makes its inferences. And so what is not there out is not what AI can access and produce. Alright? So if the theological content of India in various languages is not out there for the AI which cannot understand that language, what comes out from ChatGPT, this wonderful article is not there. And so the language itself is one of the rail guards or data sovereignty as we talk about. Two, the knowledge which is not there in the formal digital platform, such as indigenous knowledge and etc. So therefore, all that is still out, and what we have a very, very biased outcome, and so which is, and therefore at times, see, it used to be said half truth is lie, right? So when this information is based on half truth, isn't it a lie? And therefore a misinformation, and should not be therefore considered as the, authentic. And so authenticity of anything that we get from there, and unless an expert looks at it and validates it, it should not be considered as authentic. And therefore the the moment the students produce an assignment which is from ChatGPT, which is just obvious, right, isn't it? Yeah, ethical vulnerability is the big threat of use of AI and AI tools. There are these myths also that I wanted to list it out. AI will replace teachers and pastors, and then AI undermines theological authenticity. I just talked about the biased algorithm. So therefore, it does not undermine the theological authenticity. It just does not have access to that. And so this is the absence is there, right? AI threatens faith and spirituality. I think if we talk about digital spirituality, that's only possible for the digital, those who have access to the digital world. And what percentage of our communities are dependent on the digital platforms? Probably. We should be asking which section or age group of our communities are digitally connected and who are not. And those who are connected, what do we offer for them? What does the community, which is a faith community, be it church, be it otherwise a faith community, what does faith community offer to these sections who are either dependent on digital platform and who are out of or away from do not have access to digital platform? And therefore, it is, and this is my last but one slide, I wanted to make a submission, a recommendation for abundant intelligence and artificial intelligence both. And I wanted to make a couple of points to develop institutional guidelines, or to again revisit the vision of the institution. Sometimes when we do strategic planning, we do revisit the vision and mission and of the institution. Please find space for abundant intelligence as well as artificial intelligence. Build digital literacy, and then, because that's the way we can't just remain outside and say, no, I will not get impacted. Well, then we would stand out, but we would not be able to, and we'll be different, but maybe not be able to contribute. Strengthen the contextual content, and with due diligence as to what should be put out for AI and what should not be. Ensure access equity. If the institutions have, let's say the library, which is totally digital, is it only for the faculty? Is it only for the students? Is it for the research scholars? Do we make those lines against equity? And promote formation-centered pedagogy. And if the institutions today, affiliated, 66, which are affiliated to the CNET, I'm sure they have their own context. if the accountability to those comments is also being factored in, our guidelines for AI and AI writing could be different, and why not? Each one is distinct. And therefore, in line with Martin Luther King's this famous speech, I Have a Dream, I did want to make an appeal. Not Synod of Serampur, but I think it should be the autonomy of each institution, bringing back to the network, to the hub, and then see the similarities and distinctiveness of the vision, dream, prophecies for the communities and where the graduates go back to. And I'm sure the graduates of all these 66 institutions are not like IIT graduates going overseas, but they are here in the community, at least a certain percentage. And in each institution, and therefore inspire each graduate to have their own dream of today. Because this dream of today would actually speak into the reality of tomorrow. The reality of tomorrow being the freedom, really, and justice, and the faith with justice. And with that, I wanted to close. I have 3 slides with my references too, but I did want to display a forest with a thank you note on that. And with this, I'd like to close with thanking each one of you, especially the registrar and the secretariat, to have invited me. I'm sure, as a misfit to this audience, where I really wanted to. Yesterday, I was talking about this in my discrete math class, and we talk about an arithmetic structure which is called algebra, not the algebra that you study, but a set and an operator. And I told them that my generation of computer science persons, and even those who are in the industry, have worked with the algebra, where the set is a logic set, so that's the only place we have an overlap, right? That you must have studied in philosophy, and I teach logic. This set of logical constants still contains only 2 elements, true and false, right? And then we have the and, or, not are the logical operators, which help us get to all the other values. And but then I think what we hear about quantum computing, the set of constants is going to increase, and so the complexities, and so the nuances, and therefore I think there is still a time and a space with those with insights of metaphysics to also be speaking into and engaging into these areas, because if we don't engage, it doesn't mean that we are outstanding. If we engage, we contribute, we make even that engagement salty and brighten with whatever light the scripture brings to us for the future, and therefore for the changing era. And with this note, I would like to greet each one of you with my Jharkhandi Johar.